Yeah, you. Oh, yeah, I heard we're learning about Thanksgiving this week. Yeah, we are learning about Thanksgiving this week. Overhead voice. Do you have any primary and secondary sources yet? What's a primary and secondary source? You don't know what a. So you're gonna tell us right now, overhead voice? Understanding the Thanksgiving story through the use of primary and secondary sources. No. Oh, I I know what a primary source is. It's a direct source about an event or a person. They can also be an object from a certain period or even a work of art. Primary sources provide first-hand account on historical events. Mayflower Compact. This legal document was written and signed in 1620 by William Bradford and the other 41 male passengers from the Mayflower. They had to create a new compact because they decided to settle in the New England area instead of the land given to them by the King of England. Good News for New England by Edward Winslow. Written by Mayflower passenger Edward Winslow and published in 1624 in London, this journal describes what occurred from 1622 to 1623 in the Plymouth colony. Map of Plymouth, drawn by Samuel de Champlain in 1605 of the Plymouth harbor. He had called it the Cape of St. Louis. If primary sources are the history, wouldn't that mean like a secondary source is what comes after? Like it comments on it, right? Overhead voice? Oh, okay, yeah. Going off your definition, I think a secondary source could be described as it provides additional insight on primary sources through discussions or analysis. They provide further information on an event, person, place, or an object. Somerset comes boldly into Plymouth settlement. This is a woodcut by A.R. Wood and engraved by J.P. Davis in 1876. Sources describe Somerset confidently coming into the Pilgrims' colony. The Boy Who Fell Off the Mayflower, or John Howland's Good Fortune by P.J. Ling. A biography on John Howland's life on the trip to America and the start of the Plymouth colony. Not much is written on this point of Howland's life, so Lynch uses what is known about him from other accounts to write the story of Howland. While taking some creative liberties on what was being said at every moment, it creates a great visual of what it must have been like to be on the ship for 66 days, as well as starting a new colony. Native Intelligence by Charles C. Mann from Smithsonian Magazine, December 2005. This article discussed many primary sources from the time and brings different points of view to form their analysis of what went on during the 1600s and the rise and fall of the Native American confederations as the Europeans came. From what I can tell, primary sources are a great way to provide historical context in the classroom. Instead of just reading about Pilgrims and Native Americans, we're finding pictures that people took or created at the time. We're seeing what they were doing. We're seeing what they were saying. It makes them more real to the students and to the teacher in the classroom. So I guess a primary source could provide a connection. A weakness for primary sources. But I actually have a primary source already. It's 2 letters written by different pilgrims that were actually there at the Thanksgiving meal. The issue is that the letter by William Bradford, he doesn't really mention Native Americans in their contributions to the feast in the excerpt that I'm using in class, but Edward Winslow does. So I guess it can kind of show a biased view of history if you're only looking at it from one person's point of view and not another one. But I guess a way to kind of combat that is by using lots of different primary sources, getting lots of different viewpoints. So secondary sources can provide context to the source or critical analysis of it. So we're encouraging kids to also create more critical analysis on it as well. Yeah. One of the secondary sources you mentioned earlier, the article from the Smithsonian, demonstrates how Native Americans were important and kind of instrumental to Pilgrims, Europeans in general, being able to survive in the New World. If it wasn't for the ones who actually helped them, like Somerset, the picture that you have, and also Squanto, where would we be now? Well, where would they be? Secondary sources, a lot like primary sources, can provide additional viewpoints, but they're a little later on. They can be a month later, all the way to 100 to 200 years, commenting on an event. It's providing just more insight, but also an additional view. I think it's really great to have those in your class, though, because students are able to start thinking of history in a way that they can understand it. They don't have to understand it the exact way it's written. They're able to start interpreting. If they're, being introduced to secondary sources early on, especially we're in kindergarten this week, they're going to be learning that history is kind of it's up to your interpretation on some things. Here it's all your primary sources, but what can we make from these primary sources? I think secondary sources are helpful in that way because it shows them how we can start critically thinking about all of this. So I think I'm definitely going to be using these in my classroom. It's going to help my students connect more to the Pilgrims, to the Native Americans, and just in general to people and places and times that they will never know or might never know. But I'm also going to start giving them more tools to think critically about what is being presented to them.